Thanks, Alan. I won't comment on the broad framework for evidence-based decision-making that I think Robert very well put. I found very little to which I could disagree. There were some other issues on which he made comment, on which I might comment, but I won't. But there is one comment that he did make where I think I have a disagreement. He said that in this space, in the telecommunications space, we are faced with a situation of imperfect information. I would agree, perhaps imperfect, but certainly not lacking. In this space, in the telecommunications consumer policy area, we have the benefit of an extraordinary set of data produced annually by the Telecommunications Industry Ombudsman. The data most recently produced is indeed an absolute goldmine. The recent report provides data that is robust and comprehensive in helping us understand the policy problems we face from a consumer perspective. I think that no one, not even the telecommunications carriers, would argue with the message the data is giving. It's screaming out at us. Increasingly, or interestingly, and this is perhaps me using the singular of data, I also had an experience with the TIO as a consumer. And I thought I might just relate that experience, not necessarily as an example of evidence-based policy making, but certainly evidence that I found of great interest. There were three things I picked up from my recent experience. Firstly, it highlighted to me how effective TIO processes actually are. On the evening that I lodged an online complaint about a telecommunications matter, I received an automated response that evening on the next steps I should take. These were clearly explained and easily understood. The steps I was asked to take led to my complaint being resolved by my telecommunications carrier within a week. So the first message, TIO processes work. But it left me wondering, how many people are not aware of the TIO and the work they do? Clearly the TIO's Resolve Connect campaign has been effective. But despite this, I remain uneasy about how many people just live with the frustration of bad customer service from telecommunications carriers without escalating the matter to the TIO. The other issues that occurred to me were, firstly, why did it take a complaint to the TIO to resolve my issue within a week? The second question that arose to me was, why don't telecommunications carriers have adequate arrangements that enable issues to be resolved without having to refer the matter to the TIO? Two possible hypotheses came to mind. Perhaps telecommunications carriers' customer service staff are not particularly empowered to resolve issues. The person I dealt with was exceedingly polite, but essentially gave me repeatedly the same script that the person was asked to give me. The other hypothesis that came to mind was maybe the databases of the telecommunications carriers do not have the capabilities to enable their customer service staff to resolve issues. That is, they're perhaps neither empowered nor do they have the data to be able to resolve the problem. A good way to get a deeper understanding of the possible reasons would be, I think, to jointly analyse the TIO database whilst properly respecting privacy at a much more granular level. It is, I believe, a goldmine. The need for this is something that I suggest would well be worthwhile discussing further, as it is something that all of us today would benefit from. It would enable us to put more evidence around any hypothesis for the root cause of the customer service problems that telecommunication consumers are facing. It would also enable a more fruitful and more targeted dialogue with telecommunications carriers and with regulators. The rising volume of complaints and more analysis of the TIO is not to say, however, that we're still at an embryonic stage in addressing the problems. There have been some very good steps that are in train to address the very sizable task we all face to improve customer service in this space. Firstly, the creation of ACCAN itself is an important step. It's worth remembering that part of the government's rationale in supporting the establishment and increased ongoing funding of ACCAN was the need for a stronger evidence base to support the complaints of consumers and the calls for change being made on both industry and government. The government felt that for too long it had been asked to respond to concerns based predominantly on anecdotal evidence, while for their part the various consumer groups felt that they had never had the resources to mount sustained and serious research efforts. The establishment of ACCAN, with a significant research budget, should go a long way to addressing this concern. ACCAN has very quickly established itself as a body to be taken seriously. Another very significant step is the regulatory reform package the government has recently introduced. The emphasis in this on increasing competition in the industry is clearly a critical ingredient to improving customer service. The Productivity Commission's review of Australia's consumer policy framework is another important ingredient to addressing the issues that consumers more generally face. The Commission highlighted the variable outcomes for consumers, costs for businesses, and lack of responsive policy making that has resulted from the current division of responsibility between state and territory governments and the Commonwealth. In response, COAG has now agreed to a new consumer policy framework based on a single national consumer law in the Trade Practices Act. The challenge will be to make sure the details of this is implemented effectively in the telecommunications area in particular. Another recent useful initiative, and one referred to in the earlier session, has been the ACCC's paper on how internet service providers describe internet speeds in their advertising material. The fact the paper lists 8 examples of how not to do this and only 2 examples of good practice highlights the extent of the issue. I recognise Alan's point that this is a relatively tentative step in relation to a long-standing problem. But even in the few weeks since the paper was issued, there is evidence that telecommunications carriers are starting to change at least the more egregious examples of poor practice in advertising internet speeds. I'm sure the ACCC will review practice in this space in the coming months. By that stage, we should be in a better position to judge what more needs to be done. The paper will make the case for doing more very much stronger. I think we are all on notice in this regard. Finally, I just want to say a few words about Mobile Premium Services Code. I want to pay credit to the Industry, Communications Alliance and to the ACMA for its work on the new code. While there's still a long way to go on this issue, the fact that MPS complaints fell from 3,500 in July 2008 to less than 1,000 in September 2009 is pleasing. The fact that it took as long as it did for the code to be finalised on an issue we all agreed required serious attention is a serious lesson for the future. As policymakers and regulators, we clearly need to be able to respond to significant consumer issues more quickly, and we need to be better prepared to enforce the laws that already exist. The TIO data demands nothing less.